2,000 years ago, Mount Vesuvius exploded. The eruption wiped out everything in its path. The 3 million people who live here today choose to ignore the night of 79 AD. In the most violent eruption in its history, Vesuvius destroyed Pompeii. Four minutes after the cone of the volcano collapsed, a rampaging avalanche buried the little-known Roman seaside resort of Herculaneum. Herculaneum is one of the most significant Roman sites. Its most impressive building was a country estate, the Villa of the Papyri. This unique building contained the most complete ancient library the world has ever known. Thousands of papyrus scrolls in Latin and Greek were transformed into carbon by a volcanic heat of 325 degrees centigrade. Space-age science is piecing together these charred fragments, making it possible to read them.
We are making the invisible visible.
My God.
These burnt scrolls, dating from the 3rd and 2nd century BC, tell a story of life and death buried for nearly 2,000 years.
The dead are somehow whispering to us, and we strain to hear what they say.
Vesuvius dominates the Bay of Naples in southwest Italy and the 18 towns that lie on its lower slopes. This is one of the most densely populated stretches of coastline in Europe. It remains an area at high risk of volcanic eruption. Living under the shadow of Vesuvius means gambling with your life. 2,000 years ago, in the early hours of August the 25th, 79 AD, Vesuvius smothered Herculaneum in one violent pyroclastic surge. A pyroclastic flow is the most deadly outpouring of a volcano. A fierce hot avalanche of gas, rock and debris traveling at terrible speed. On that fateful day in 79 AD, a single pyroclastic flow of massive proportions tore down the mountain and swamped the town of Herculaneum, rolling out into the sea for a further 400 meters to create an entirely new shoreline. An eyewitness at the time wrote, "Future centuries will see, when crops grow back and render this desert green again, that towns and populations lay buried beneath their feet, and that the land of their ancestors disappeared in a sea of mud and fire." 2,000 years ago, this stretch of land did not exist. The avalanche that created it poured into the sea, having buried Herculaneum in 90 feet of its burning debris.
I really haven't been to Herculaneum without a sense of magic. It leans out and grabs you.
Just 50 years ago, when Herculaneum was first excavated, it was recognized as the best preserved ancient town on the planet. Yet it is rarely visited and almost unknown outside Italy.
Pompeii gets all the limelight, but you get a whole different line on ancient life from Herculaneum compared to Pompeii. You've got a much closer focus on the domestic element, on houses, on streets. I think the streets of Herculaneum are quite unusually vivid, and because you've got the balconies overlooking the streets, you've got a real sense of how crowded and busy an ancient city could be.
Historian Andrew Wallace Hadrill has a special knowledge of ancient Roman civilization. The extraordinarily well-preserved state of Herculaneum has enabled us to picture that world.
Herculaneum has got a warmth, and you can actually wander around the houses and feel, yes, people lived here. You feel a real sense of the past as something present. You're very lucky in most cases of ancient sites if anything's preserved above a metre above the ground.
The manner of Herculaneum's burial accounts for its miraculous preservation. It was covered by a torrent of intensely hot debris within seconds. Unlike lava flows, which topple everything in their path, the pyroclastic flow simply smothered it, then solidified, holding the structure intact. Wooden beams and window frames were carbonized, turning into charcoal, but they remained in place. A heavy marble basin was picked up and thrown across a room, but not broken. Hot ash and gas poured into every available space. When it cooled, it solidified around the ancient buildings. It still fills the unexcavated rooms as well as most of the streets in the town. Two-thirds of Herculaneum is still buried beneath 90 feet of volcanic rock. The original pyroclastic material was covered with lava from an eruption in 1631. It made a perfect foundation for new building. The modern-day town of Ercolano was built on top of the ancient Roman resort, making further excavation virtually impossible. The slopes of Vesuvius are littered with buried ruins. Herculaneum was the first to be discovered, and that was completely by chance. This discreet 19th century doorway marks the entrance to one of the greatest archaeological accidents in history. 300 years ago, in 1709, a villager dug a well in her garden and tumbled into a 4-story Roman theatre. A semicircular building, it is the most perfect example of a Roman theatre in existence, and could seat thousands of people. When the theatre was first discovered, entrepreneurs and fortune hunters set out to plunder its treasures. Before long, anyone who could began tunneling furiously in all directions. Their rewards were ancient Roman artifacts. Thousands of statues, vases and frescoes were hacked out and removed. But the existence of such an important theatre led to further discoveries.
If an important house is discovered, it could just be an isolated villa. But when a large theatre was found, it indicated the presence of a sizable town. It was the discovery of this plaque, and another one like it during the excavations of the 18th century, that revealed that this town was, in fact, the historic ancient town of Herculaneum.
Most of the men who organized tunneling were only interested in hunting treasure. But as time went on, others mapped out and documented their findings. These explorers developed the modern science of archaeology. Archaeologist Antonio de Simone and geologist Umberto Cioffi followed the footsteps of those pioneers.
This theatre is the cradle of all modern archaeology. It all began with the discovery of this monument. The existence of a magical place such as this helps us understand how archaeology started.
Da dove veniamo è un fatto di emozione. Se noi pensiamo che qui ci sono passati I grandi maestri.
For us, it's emotional and exciting to think that here, a long time ago, the first masters of our discipline worked.
The thirst for new relics from the lost world was insatiable. Before long, those first chaotic excavations had produced a network of tunnels crisscrossing the entire region. During those frenzied days, the explorers stumbled upon a vast Roman villa, which was later recognized as the holy grail of Latin and Greek philosophy. Located some distance from the main buildings and at the end of a tunnel, there was no access to the building from outside. The tunnels were abandoned and the villa was lost. 250 years later, De Simone and Cioffi set out to find that villa.
For 226 years, archaeologists had searched this entire area trying to find the villa by referring to old maps. Instead, we decided to approach local people directly, asking whether they knew of any old wells or shafts.
In 1984, they were called to a house in Ercolano. Tucked away in the basement behind an obsolete washing machine, they found an abandoned shaft.
We climbed down the well on a rusty ladder. And as we moved down, Antonio said, "I think I see something."
I saw some stones positioned in a strange way, which seemed to be blocking some kind of passage. We went into the passage with our torches and found ourselves directly below the villa. I was able to push my head up through a small gap, and there, stretched out before me, were the floor mosaics of the villa. We had accomplished an archaeologist's dream that had lasted for 250 years.
Cioffi broke one of archaeology's golden rules, but he realized he would need to prove his find.
I picked up a small piece of mosaic to take to Mr. Conticello, the superintendent of Pompeii, so that he would believe us. We went to Pompeii and rushed into his office unannounced. He was sitting at his desk, and we placed the piece of mosaic in front of him.
He thought we were joking.
He went pale. He got up and said, "Have you found it?" And we said, "Yes, we found it."
De Simone and Cioffi had rediscovered a building which was the crowning glory of their careers and of Herculaneum. In a pit carved from 2,000-year-old volcanic rock is the only surviving library of the ancient world. The Villa of the Papyri.
This is part of Herculaneum, and this is the Villa of the Papyri. Part of it has been excavated from the volcanic rock which consumed it in 79 AD.
It took 6 years for the team to open up and document even this tiny section of the villa. Most of the building is still entombed in 90 feet of rock, but detailed plans reveal just how stunning it was. Ancient Rome is known for its military power, but the Villa of the Papyri contained the written records of Rome's knowledge. A palatial building, it dominated 300 yards of coastline on the Bay of Naples. The villa was the country estate of Calpurnius Piso Caesennius, the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. Its vast library attracted scholars from all over the Roman Empire, a seat of learning for the greatest minds of the ancient world. De Simone and Cioffi rediscovered the library, but not its contents. They had been removed 200 years before De Simone and Cioffi were even born. The first excavations of Herculaneum were begun in 1738, when Charles III of Bourbon ruled Naples. The National Library in Naples was once the Royal Bourbon Palace. The most precious items from the Villa of the Papyri were removed and are now housed here, in temperature-controlled conditions. When the 18th century tunnellers first explored the building, they unearthed thousands of strange objects. At first, no one knew what they were, but it soon became clear. This is a carbonized scroll, an ancient book, converted to charcoal by the intense heat of the pyroclastic flow. It is one of thousands of tightly rolled reed scrolls containing the writings of Roman and Greek scholars.
It's a great privilege to work on the papyri from Herculaneum. I have dreamt about it since the first time I was here 30 years ago as a young scholar.
Professor Canute Cleve heads a small team of dedicated volunteers who are determined to do the impossible. Their aim is to prise the charred scrolls apart and read them. Each of these hardened lumps is a 2,000-year-old book. When they were first found, they were not recognized, and many were simply discarded.
The first time they were found, they were believed to be charcoal for the fireplaces in the villa and thrown away.
Once the early explorers realized the papyri were books, they did try to open them, often with disastrous results. Many were sliced through, stabbed at, and torn apart. Today, opening teams are trying to undo the damage. The scrolls Cleve's team is tackling are fused solid.
The most difficult papyri were left to us when we started in the middle of the 1980s. There hadn't been open papyri for about 100 years.
Cleve's team has pioneered a new technique to separate the layers of papyrus. They coat the outer layer with a gelatin and acetic acid solution. The gelatin holds each fragile layer in place, while the acid separates it from the one beneath. It's a piecemeal process, but it has enabled the papyri to be laid out and translated.
There are still 1,000 papyri to be opened, and I think it will take more than our lifetime to open them. I would describe it as listening from a voice from the grave, from the dead. The dead are somehow whispering to us in those papyri, and we strain to hear what they say.
Opening the ancient books is only the beginning. Reading them has been extremely difficult, the results patchy, but a new scientific technique might change that.
We are making the invisible visible.
Stephen Boras travels the world applying NASA technology developed to photograph stars and planets to the deciphering of ancient texts. This pioneering technology could open a window on the ancient world.
That's a pretty day.
A room in the National Library has been converted into a laboratory for Boras and his wife Susan to photograph and digitize the entire collection of Herculaneum papyri. Using a multi-spectral camera, they can photograph across the full range of the light spectrum. They are searching for a wavelength that will isolate the ink of the writing from the carbonized papyrus document.
Just a little bit at a time.
Here you have a collection that is burned. You have black ink on black papyri. Okay, center it, and we'll capture it.
Goodness.
Okay, that's
Wow.
good. What we do is we take a digital image using a specific wavelength of light from the visible clear into the infrared. The ink will somewhere along there show up in a specific wavelength of light, and we're searching where that is. The papyri, the black or the carbonized papyri, is going to drop out because it has a different reflective characteristic. Good. Once we find that contrast, this is where we concentrate our imaging. In some of these last scrolls, we're finding some of the greatest response.
This is the papyrus I was telling you about.
Up to now, researchers thought that the blackened papyrus segments on this board were blank.
Okay, now that's just what you're seeing here.
Now that's what we're seeing with the unaided eye. We see a very little hint of ink in here starting to appear, but still has provided a great deal of enjoyment to see the expression of satisfaction on the scholar's part.
Okay, so
Astounding.
My God.
Let's focus again. They can read something they have long given up on and see ink there where there was no visible ink before.
See if you can get some more words out of it.
Agathon estin kata tainde. You can see that from here.
That works?
Yeah.
The wonder of their photography is there just springs to life on this screen the difference between ink and papyrus, and I can't doubt anymore.
So this will change the way we read the papyri.
Really?
Totally, yes.
Oh, yeah.
These texts, like most of the papyri deciphered so far, are written in Greek.
It is focus.
Given that Herculaneum was a Roman town, that may seem bizarre. But the scrolls confirm that Greek remained the language of intellectuals well into the 1st century AD. Using NASA technology designed for space, the most complete ancient library in existence is being read for the first time in 2,000 years. Forensic science is gradually making sense of the scrolls. But until the digital archive is complete, the only way of reading Herculaneum's books involves days or years hunched over a microscope. Even so, the sensation of being the first to decipher the texts is thrilling.
These are unique. They tell us about the intellectual life of the 1st century BC, which is totally unknown to us outside them.
Most of the scrolls belong to Philodemus, poet, philosopher, and literary theorist. Philodemus was close to some of the greatest minds in ancient Rome.
You get to know the man intimately. He just comes off these papyri into your room. This guy was a beloved member of high Roman society. He clearly knew great people like Lucretius, Catullus, and Cicero. Of his own generation and of the next generation, he taught people like Virgil and Horace. Now we know how Virgil was educated. Now we know what kind of lectures he heard when he went to school.
The writings reveal that Philodemus was a disciple of Epicurean philosophy. Epicurus was a Greek philosopher living in 300 BC. He rejected God and an afterlife and advocated the pursuit of pleasure through the avoidance of pain as a way of life. Under Philodemus's influence, Epicurean philosophy attracted a strong following.
Epicureans basically say, there's no God you need to worry about. There's only life. When you die, so that wasn't a welcome message in the 18th century. It might seem a little more relevant now.
The upper echelons of Roman society embraced Greek culture, particularly the philosophical teachings. After Philodemus's death, Epicureans still came to study the papyri, which championed the carpe diem, seize the day attitude.
We must exercise ourselves in the things which bring happiness, since if that be present, we have everything.
Epicureans valued stimulation of the mind as a route to happiness too.
Let no one be slow to seek wisdom when he is young, nor weary in the search for it when he grows old.
Herculaneum was no workaday town. Its elegant private and public buildings reflected the Epicurean belief in living life on earth to the full. Epicurus himself saw the route to happiness as simply the absence of pain. But by the 1st century AD, the hedonistic pursuit of pleasure had become an end in itself. Herculaneum's suburban baths are spectacular, reflecting the residents' devotion to physical pleasure.
Water is one of the defining features, if you think about it, of Roman civilization. Aqueducts, baths. And baths like these were one of the great technological marvels of the Roman Empire. Coming to the baths was a really important social occasion. Everyone in the town does it. If you look around the houses, very few of them have private baths. The very rich have baths, but those too would be places where they'd invite their friends to, because bathing is a communal activity. And it's like any social activity, it's full of its rituals. You don't simply bathe. You do lots of things. It's a matter of personal choices. You go to your doctor before you go to the baths. You consult. How am I feeling? Have I got a slight fever? And he will tell you what sequence of baths to take.
Bathing was a social event, providing plenty of opportunity for intellectual discussion. It was an essential daily ritual.
In the centre there, you've got a sort of bronze boiler effect into which the water continually flows, gets warmed up and recirculated. So here you've got space for a couple of dozen people to bathe at the same time.
Scrolls from the villa also confirm that Epicurean teachings promoted equality between people, even advocating the abolition of slavery. At Herculaneum, slaves could work their way up to full Roman citizenship.
This is actually a classic of a smart Roman house. You come in from the door, you're into a big atrium, the tablinum, an enormous great reception area, and then out at the back here, you have a garden surrounded by columns, what's often called a peristyle. And that's really a sign of real success. And of course, what we ask is, what's the kind of guy who lives in this sort of magnificence? And he's a guy who really has made it, but he started as a slave. And the story then goes on, because just over there is the college of the smartest ex-slaves in town. Well, this is a really unusual and interesting building. It's not a private house, but it's a sort of clubhouse. They call it the Collegium Augustalium, the College of the Augustales. And if you want to know what an Augustalis is, you come over here. And the first thing, Augusto Sacrum, sacred to Augustus. It's always a surprise for us to realize that they worshipped the emperor, either the living emperor or the dead emperor, but worshipped as a god.
The members of this exclusive gentlemen's club were wealthy ex-slaves. Here they set up a shrine in honor of the only human being in mythology ever to have been promoted to a god, Hercules, the man after whom the town of Herculaneum was named.
Hercules is, among the gods, the human who was promoted to divine status. Hercules becomes a god as a reward for all his labors. And there couldn't be a more appropriate god for these freedmen who are slaves who have become citizens as a reward for their labors.
The suddenness of the catastrophe which struck Herculaneum has allowed its story to be told. This town was frozen in time at the very moment of its destruction. The impact of that moment on the estimated 5,000 people who lived here has never been examined. When Herculaneum was first excavated 50 years ago, no bodies were found. A gruesome discovery just a few years ago changed all that.
We've been working together for a few years on integrating the study of archaeological remains and anthropological findings so that we can understand better the effects of the eruption on objects and people.
Volcanologist Giuseppe Mastro Lorenzo and anthropologist Pier Paolo Petrone have found out that the last moments of Herculaneum were very different from that of its neighbor Pompeii. From the very moment the pyroclastic flow burst from Vesuvius's crater, Herculaneum was doomed. A study of the research shows that the avalanche had an internal temperature of 325 degrees centigrade. Traveling at 65 feet a second, the flow covered the distance of 7 miles from crater to coast in just 4 minutes. Herculaneum was consumed and preserved in seconds.
Even though they lived beneath one, people at the time had little understanding of volcanoes. To most people, it was just a mountain.
It has taken scientists until the last 20 years to fully grasp the violence and the speed of Herculaneum's destruction. Until then, the ferocity of pyroclastic flows was little understood. As no bodies were discovered in earlier excavations, it was assumed that everyone had escaped. But in 1981, scientists made a chilling discovery. Along Herculaneum's original seashore were a row of boat chambers. When they were exposed, it was found that hundreds of people had taken refuge here, spending their last moments huddled together for comfort. Crowded 30 or 40 to a chamber beneath a layer of light ash were dozens of human remains, caught at the precise moment of their death.
For the first time here, we've had the opportunity to study groups of skeletons in situ, in the exact position where they died. People were frozen exactly where they sat when they felt the full impact of the pyroclastic flow.
Studies of the remains reveal that this was a moment of horror. Petroni and Mastro Lorenzo found evidence of heat so extreme that teeth shattered. Examination of the skulls suggests that the blood inside them may have boiled. The bodies of over 300 people have been found so far. A few had reached the beach, but most people crammed into the 12 boat chambers. The position of the bodies as a group tells a powerful story. Bound in a fearful embrace, they were boiled, then smothered by a pyroclastic flow they probably didn't even see coming. Their reclining positions suggest that most were asleep. In one corner, the bones of an unborn child were found beneath those of its mother's ribcage. Most likely waiting to be evacuated by sea, their discovery has also thrown up an intriguing question.
There is a varied cross-section of people within the chambers. Adults, children, young people, women, men. But there are no old people. Very few people over 40. So, where are the other people of Herculaneum?
The absence of Herculaneum's older inhabitants is puzzling. Were the older citizens, the intellectual elders, so revered that they were first to be evacuated? We know from the dominance of the Villa of the Papyri that ancient Roman civilization prized knowledge above most things. But could even this society have revered knowledge above the lives of its young, the seeds of the future? Besides, Epicurean philosophy preached that those who had lived life to the full should greet death without fear. It might simply be that older people couldn't make it to the beach. They may have gathered elsewhere in the town. Until more bodies are found, the riddle of the missing elders will remain. Some answers surely lie in buried sections of Herculaneum, but the secrets of this magnificent town, peeled open only 50 years ago, may be lost forever. Herculaneum is crumbling. Chipped inch by inch from the rock that held them together, most of the villas are now sinking into ruin.
In the time I have known Herculaneum, it's changed absolutely dramatically in terms of sheer physical disintegration of the site. Enormous beams are just cracking and falling. Whole parts of the town are barred off with that terrifying notice that just says crolli, collapses.
Pollution, erosion, lack of money and mismanagement are all to blame for the condition of the site. Andrew Wallace Hadrill believes that before any more excavation is undertaken, the buildings that have been exposed already should be restored.
If you just come to the site, use it, dig it up, have a quick look, then let it crumble and go on and dig up the next bit. That is archaeological rape. If you expose it, you have a responsibility to look after it. And that's that responsibility that has to be faced up to. Very soon, what makes Herculaneum absolutely without compare in ancient archaeology will have gone if they don't do something to preserve it.
Archaeology's first prize may be its greatest loss. All excavation in Herculaneum has been suspended. Yet locked beneath the buried lower floors of the Villa of the Papyri, the other half of its library is waiting to be discovered. Historians believe that a collection of scrolls written in Latin is still sealed in volcanic rock. Plays, poetry, art and philosophy, Latin scripts to complement the Greek papyri. Without these, the story of Herculaneum will never be complete. The Villa of the Papyri is now choked with weeds and surrounded by brackish water. The ravages of weather and time have taken their toll. But there is a greater danger. There may not be time to repair the villa to its full glory. Vesuvius could erupt at any time and reclaim its most enchanting victim. Mount Vesuvius will erupt again. The only question is when. Philodemus's treatise on death and his admiration for those who embrace it could have been written for those who gamble with life by living here now.
All this anxious love of life of theirs comes only from the fear of death, and they try to push all images of it away from them. And then, when it comes too close and vivid to ignore, a strange thing happens to them. When it comes suddenly before their eyes, they, summing up with utter clarity as one sums up at the end of a long sentence, breathe their last, as calmly as if their awareness of death had never failed them for the smallest interval of time.
Vesuvius has erupted at least 100 times in the last 6,000 years. Before the 79 AD eruption, the volcano had stood dormant for nearly 700 years. No wonder people had no fear. On that day in August, a column of ash 20 miles high had been spewing out of the cone for 12 hours. The fallout rained down on Pompeii to the south, perhaps lulling the people of Herculaneum into a false sense of security. It may be that the people found in the boat sheds were those who were last to leave. If so, they paid with their lives. Today, there are elaborate evacuation plans for the entire area surrounding the volcano. But what are the chances of evacuating the 18 towns, with their combined population of 700,000, in time? Portici is a typical example. It's just one of the densely packed towns which make up the urban sprawl between volcano and coast.
The town of Portici has one of the highest population densities in Europe. There are 13,000 inhabitants per square kilometre. It's a huge number.
Vincenzo Savaresi is an officer of the local civil protection force. Getting people out in time will be his responsibility, and he's worried.
This street is typical of the poor road system in the historic town centre. We have to remember that every little town in the Vesuvian region has the same problem.
The narrow streets make efficient evacuation unlikely. The poor state of most of the buildings means that many of them would collapse with the first earth tremors of an eruption, blocking escape routes. Savaresi is under no illusion as to the immensity of the task facing his civil protection force. His work is made more difficult by local attitudes. Most people ignore the risks, despite the warnings of history. In 1631, after an eruption that killed 4,000 people, blunt advice was etched on a plaque in the center of town. If you love life, do not think about material goods. Do not think about the things of value. Leave everything and run away.
An emergency plan is working when every individual knows what to do in the event of an emergency. That just isn't the case yet. This means that if there were an eruption today, we couldn't say for sure that everyone would know what to do. Most people ignore the problem.
Portice's 64,000 residents, between them, own 30,000 vehicles. Unless people follow an evacuation strategy, there will be chaos. Even if you were lucky enough to make it out of the town, there is a single access road feeding onto the two-lane autostrada. It's the only land route out of the entire area, and crammed full even on an ordinary day. There was no effective road access out of Herculaneum. Escape had to be by sea, and Portice's saving grace might also be its harbour. But if Vesuvius were to erupt tomorrow, thousands of evacuees from villages all over the region, trapped between volcano and sea, would flood this entire coastline. The simple fact is that the local population have no reliable means of escaping a Vesuvian eruption, by land or by sea. Little has changed in 2,000 years. With so many people in the vicinity of Vesuvius and such limited opportunity to escape, it's crucial to know what state the volcano is in. The steaming vents warn that it's only sleeping. Vesuvius is dormant, but alive. Playful wisps hint at the power that is lying just beneath the surface. Ancient people had little knowledge of the violent nature of their surroundings. Today's population has the sophisticated new science of volcanology on its side. Vesuvius has been identified as one of the most dangerous volcanoes on the planet. Giovanni Orsi is head volcanologist at the Vesuvian Observatory. Vesuvius is studied more closely than any other volcano in the world. The last eruption was only 55 years ago.
We are sitting here on a lava flow, and this is the last lava flow generated by Vesuvius. This is the lava flow which was extruded during the 1944 eruption.
By Vesuvian standards, it was nothing. Even so, it completely destroyed the small town of San Sebastiano. The 1944 eruption was recorded on film by occupying American troops. It was the final outpouring of a flow of lava that had begun with the explosive eruption of 1631, 300 years earlier. The slow-moving flow was easily avoided. The few people who died were crushed by falling masonry, not engulfed by lava. It is the only eruption in living memory. Houses were soon rebuilt, people moved back, and now the eruption is all but forgotten. Vesuvius, though, is simply playing for time. The volcano has been dormant for over 55 years, but the longer it sleeps, the stronger it grows. Mount Vesuvius is covered with a network of sensors which monitor its pulse 24 hours a day. These measure vertical ground movements, tilt, gravity, seismic activity, and temperature. One of these sensors is within the crater itself. Vesuvius's crater is now completely blocked, but 6 miles below the surface, its magma chamber is refilling, putting the volcanic plug under increasing pressure. The longer this pressure builds, the more violent the eruption will be, like the cork of a shaken champagne bottle. As each year passes, the more likely an eruption becomes. Any movement of magma towards the surface is a sure sign of renewed activity. When the magma stirs, steam vents or fumaroles register a change in temperature and gas content.
If a mass of magma moves toward the surface, this mass of magma is very hot. So this magma exhaust gases. So these gases come to surface directly through fumaroles, and if we check the fumaroles, and we do, we will see also variation in composition and temperature of fumaroles of water, and that's another indication that the magma is moving at depth.
Carbon dioxide gas is a natural byproduct of volcanic activity. The amount given off indicates the aggression level of the molten magma deep below the surface.
The composition of the gases emitted from the fumaroles could be very influenced by the magma at the depth. So when some of this component increases, we have information about, eventually, about the movement of the magma.
The entire network is linked via radio to the observatory's nerve center in Naples. There has been evidence of seismic activity very recently, but for today at least, it's normal. For the moment, Vesuvius is at rest.
The Vesuvius Observatory is really a reference point for the people living in the area. They call us, they ask us questions every day.
Volcanologists here are confident that they can provide a warning well ahead of an eruption. But one thing is certain. To be anywhere near when this crater explodes again will mean that you've already left it too late.
People living around the volcano also to learn to live together with the volcano, and they've also to learn to respect the volcano and to be ready to leave the volcano when the volcano gets hungry.
2,000 years ago, the population of Herculaneum had no early warning system. Many gathered on a beach and cowered in hiding. Even now, we do not know how many of them escaped. Today, the population of the 18 towns has guardian angels watching over them, made up of volcanologists and a civil protection force. Scientists can make predictions, but they still cannot control the forces of nature. When the volcano erupts again, will people here have a better chance of survival than the citizens of Herculaneum? The longer it sleeps, the more violent the inevitable eruption will be. In this precarious relationship, Vesuvius will have the last word.